What's the strangest, scariest thing you've seen in the middle of the night? I live in a ground-level studio. My bed is near the window. I reached to turn off the bedside lamp and saw someone in a white hoodie through the gap in the blinds. I went, "What the hell?" and moved closer to get a better look and hopefully scare the creeper off. The person in the hoodie aggressively moved closer and put his face directly into the blind gap. I jumped back and he ran away. Installed a security camera the next day. My parents were driving us home through a suburban area of Buffalo, New York in the early 1980s. It was late spring, I think. The windows of the car were open a little. I heard a woman scream, "Help me." No one in my family heard it. It happened again. I started crying but no one else heard it. Still haunts me 40 years later. I used to do a lot of night running after work on a rural road and an opossum and her little kids were crossing in front of me. I didn't see them but I heard this loud hiss and saw the line of them. Not strange but definitely scared the shit out of me. Actually made me reach for my gun. My dog was standing on my bed growling into barks at something and I saw it move. Hit the light and it was his reflection in my TV. What a fucking dope. Oh man, I actually had forgotten about this, but my original Xbox scared the ever-living shit out of me once. As an adult, I left my original Xbox plugged in and idling on the home screen, and went to sleep. I woke up later to hear ghostly voices mumbling and talking to each other coming from the TV. It sounded just like EVP from those crappy ghost shows, where you can hear its voices but not what it's really saying. And to top it all off, over the voices were scary mechanical sound effects and spooky music. I have never, and I mean never, left an Xbox idling since. The explanation is Microsoft thought it would be neat to use some free astronaut transmissions for their futuristic console, and wanted space music to go with it. Here's a video of what happens if you let the Xbox idle. You can skip to 9 o'clock for creepy sounds and 9:30 for some voices. https://youtube.be/wibby6i5adwq. Not something I saw exactly but felt. I was maybe 10 and I woke in the middle of the night to something whooshing past my head. When I turned on the light, my pillow was on top of my dresser. I'm sure I must have thrown it in my sleep but it scared the crap out of 10-yo-me. My cat screams at night. And not just any type of scream. Like she sounds like a human baby when she screams. Anyway, the night this happened, it was also during a power outage, so the lights were flickering, and my sister is freaking out. We go and find the cat looking possessed and trying to attack us. Weird because normally she is very affectionate towards us. One night when I was living in a small condo in Arizona, I woke up to a furtive, clicking sound at my bedroom metal grate over my sliding door to my walled-in patio. The wall was almost 7 feet high, and my neighbor's cat would jump in and eventually realize he was trapped, so he would scratch at the screen so I could help him or come out to pet him, which happened pretty often. Hearing the sound, I thought it was Mike, so I opened the slider without looking and looked down as I opened the grate. On the ground bumping into the grate were 30 or so Palo Verde beetles. Think a 5-inch roach with huge antennas, but they are not roaches, just gross. Several were attached in amplexus mating, making them look way bigger since they mate end to end. I gickily closed the grate, crushing a few, closed the slider and shut off the light. I guess they were attracted to the moisture in my potted garden plants I kept on the patio. I slept on the couch that night so I didn't hear them scratching at the grate, and by morning all but the few dead ones were gone. It was so gross. The next time Mike came by, I was much more cautious to see who was there first. I shared an apartment with 2 roommates. One male, one female. Me and the other girl slept in the same room, because we are both girls, and the guy had the other room. One night I couldn't sleep. The door opened and the guy came sneaking in. He then lifted the blanket of my friend's bed and jerked off onto her feet, wiped it off and walked away. I was too scared to say anything while it happened, but I told her the next day and we moved out that same day. Got up to use the bathroom. I saw the shadow of a cat sprint down the hallway. And #X200B. Our cat had died over a year before that happened. Walking out of Taos Canyon from the hot springs with my buddies around midnight during a new moon. It's about 40 degrees so pretty chilly, and we hear this mumbling in the dark ahead. As we approach, this scraggly man comes shuffling in bare feet down the trail. He had no flashlight, wearing filthy pinstripe blue pajamas and talking to himself incoherently. As my friend and I back up to the side of the narrow trail, I asked, "How's it going, man?" "Another beautiful day," he said in a super cheery voice, and went right back to taking to himself. He continued down the trail into darkness. We hauled ass back to the cars where our other buddy was. She said she had watched him walk in off the mess. I've woken up 2x around 3 a.m. and my beagle is standing at the corner of the bed staring straight at the dark doorway growling. She never growls. This is literally the only 2x I've heard her growl, and I have no idea what she thinks is there. Fucking laundry on a chair can be terrifying. A mountain lion glaring at me right against my window. I woke up one morning at 3:30, got on my bike and started riding to work. I was pedaling up a hill where there was no lights except for my bike and there was fog. I could see something in the middle of the road. It looked like a person. As I got closer, I could see it was moving toward me and it was over 7 foot tall. I turned and sped home. I called in sick, told my wife I was sick and haven't told anyone the truth. I wish there was someone there to see it with me. Beautiful clear night in the suburbs of Baltimore in the 70s. I was a kid chasing lightning bugs. Then I noticed a blue sphere in the sky. Small at first, a fraction of the diameter of the moon, but it grew larger in size. As it grew, I could see dark and light sections. The dark sections looked like craters. It kept growing and was many times larger than the moon. My father was drunk and couldn't tell me what it was. That was before the internet. All I could imagine was that a planet was rapidly approaching Earth and that we were all going to die. I fell asleep scared to death under my bed, and woke up the next morning just fine. My teacher in school explained that NASA had launched a rocket into the atmosphere that released a dye that allowed observers to see how the atmosphere moved. In the end, it wasn't scary at all. But while it was happening, I was sure I was going to die. I hate that I opened this thread at 11:24 p.m., while in bed. Headless dog being ravaged by other dogs. I saw the creepypasta called The Rake at the foot of my bed in a sleep paralysis episode. It was clawing at my feet and trying to pull me out of bed. I don't get scared easily at all, even in IRL situations, but just looking at a picture of the rake terrifies me. I was driving to one of my buddies' houses back in high school. The road I would take to get there ran through some dense woods for a few miles and was very dark. On my way there, I saw a man just standing on the side of the road, just staring into the darkness with a blank look on his face. Not walking, staring at nothing. There isn't anything but woods for several miles. On my way back home, at least 4 hours later, he was still there. In the same spot, staring at nothing. Maybe not scary, but super weird and creepy. I saw all sorts of weird shit delivering newspapers at 3 o'clock in the morning, but the strangest, scariest was the time I found the bottom half of a disemboweled house cat in the middle of the road, then later, found the top half several streets over. I once happened to look out my window at 2 a.m. or something and saw a possum make a beeline for a skunk and tackle it. Bizarre since first, I don't think possums are normally aggressive. Second, skunks aren't a very smart target even if you are aggressive. And third, it was so random that this should happen at the exact rare moment I happened to look out in the middle of the night. We were driving home after visiting family that lived about 7 hours away. We had left late, so it was about midnight when we were still about an hour away from home. Coming up to an overpass on the highway, I noticed movement from the right side of the embankment, which was closest to me since I was sitting in the passenger seat. As we got closer, I realized it looked like a person, laying on their stomach on the ground. I thought maybe someone had gotten hit by a car and was hurt, but before I started to say anything to my dad, we got closer and I fully saw what was happening. It was a woman, wearing a tattered dress or longish tunic shirt. She was on her hands and feet, and was quickly crawling up the embankment towards the concrete underside of the overpass. Something about the way her limbs were moving and crawling freaked me out, so I just stared in shock and horror as we passed by her, as she continued to jerkily climb upwards into the darkness of the overpass. Freaking terrified me, and I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep until we got home. I don't like driving out that way past town anymore. Woke one night when I was about 5 years old. Was gazing around the room for a bit. I looked at the window and there, staring wide-eyed at me, was a man. Hands pressed against the window, just staring with his head cocked to the side. Didn't even flinch when I noticed him. I hid under the covers, then peeked out to see if he moved. He was still there. I decided to just stay under the covers. I don't know why I didn't scream. I was camping at a primitive campsite with a family member about 9 years ago. We went during the week, and upon entering the area, the person checking us in informed us we were the only people in the primitive section that night, which is about 4 miles away from the other non-primitive camping areas and any form of civilization. There was only one road to get in and out, so we would see anyone headed our way. My family member fell asleep quickly, but I had gotten a weird feeling as the night got darker. No cars had drove on the road by us, so I don't believe any humans were around. I could hear something crunching in the brush about 30 yards away, but hoped it was a deer as they are common in the area. As I was trying to be rational, telling myself there are no large predators besides coyotes in the area, something let out a terrifying scream, roar like I've never heard before or since. It shook me to my core and wasn't close to sounds of a coyote, raccoon, bear, or even a human. My family member woke up in a commotion and we heard something running away heavily in the brush. We grabbed the essentials and sprinted to the car and drove around until morning. Edit. Wow, lots of replies asking for more info about the sound. It was kind of middle-ranged, not a shriek but not too deep either. It lasted pretty long. Maybe 8 seconds if I had to guess. Didn't get an exact number as I was focused on not shitting myself in that moment. What really made it terrifying was the volume of it. I swear it rattled everything. This was in Ohio for those asking about native animals. Finally, I can contribute. I work in animal research, and today a colleague mentioned that a new primate facility would be coming to our area. Always been interested in understanding the process, even though I wouldn't want to do it long term. After I got home, I took a nap that turned into about 2.5 hours of sleep until I awoke in sleep paralysis. The bathroom attached to my bedroom had the door about 80% shut and totally dark as there is no window in there. As I laid there unable to move, my right eye was open enough to see the bathroom door, which I became convinced had several large primates behind it. In a frantic haze, I decided I had to get out but couldn't move. All I could do was watch what I think were very mild hallucinations, or possibly just the heightened suggestibility of the state I was in. Furry hunched figures shuffling behind the door. Smaller primates crawling around the vanity lights, the occasional fingers around the door's edge. This sleep paralysis thing has happened to me before, but usually it is just confusing and frustrating. This is the first time it was terrifying. Not me, but a good friend. Lived with his wife and kids and their German Shepherd in a one-bedroom apartment. One night he's up late, reading the paper in the kitchen when his dog lets out a very low growl. The kind that you had to be right next to him to hear. But it was there. He tells the dog to be quiet, shuts all the lights in the apartment and slowly tiptoes to the peephole in his front door. And there, looking back at him, right in the peephole, is a human eye. Because he has darkness behind him, the guy doesn't see him. Then he sees the guy look into the peepholes of his two next-door neighbors and realizes the guy is casing the places for a burglary. And that's when he lets him have it and screams, "GTFO, or I will let my German Shepherd loose on your ass." And his dog goes absolutely nuts, barking like crazy and trying to pull the door open. The guy hightailed it out of there, and that was the end of it. About 3 a.m. on a deserted highway, I drove by what looked like a body wrapped in a white sheet, discarded on the median. I took the next exit, drove back and took that exit, and came back. Passed it and parked a little ways up. It still looked like a body wrapped in a sheet. Got out to go look closer when I heard loud rustling in the scrub trees of the median, so jumped in my truck and drove off. Pre-cell phone, so I didn't call police. I looked in the papers but never saw anything. When I've posted this before, I got chastised about being reckless. I know. Saw a guy with a shotgun in my house. My brother and I were sleeping in the TV lounge. Woke up and saw a guy with shotgun near the front door. Thought it was a dream. But, just in case, I woke my bro up and asked him, "Who is that?" The guy heard us and ran out. We were 7 and 8 years old at the time. It was the middle of the night and I crawled to the end of my bed and looked out the second-story window in our farmhouse. Maybe 40 feet away and 20 feet up was a light blue, electric-looking ball of light about 6 feet by 6 feet. It slowly arched from left to right until it went behind my barn. The only thing I can think is it was as ball lightning, or I was dreaming, but I doubt it. I'm going to preface this with the important detail that all of the garages in the neighborhood that I grew up in were detached from the houses. Until I was about 12, my bedroom was on the ground floor of our house and my parents' room was right across the hall. We had a dog, Oreo, that we adopted when I was 2. When she was about 5 and I was about 7, she went blind. Around that time, she became the world's best watchdog, and this is why I believe that. It was the middle of winter when I was maybe 9 or 10, and there was snow on the ground. It was a quiet night. Oreo was restless, and we didn't know why. Her hearing seemed to improve immensely since she lost her vision and she would bark at kids playing down the road or the mailman 2 houses down. But it was close to midnight at this point, and the neighborhood was asleep. Oreo wasn't. She barked at our back door and scratched at it like someone was taunting her. Oreo paced from my room, to my parents' room, to the back door, again and again and again. It woke me and my mom up, and my mom finally got up and followed Oreo to the back door and coaxed her back to bed. The following morning, we wake up to some terrifying news. Our neighbors across the street lost their garage in a fire. The empty house for sale behind them completely burned down. The grown-ups around me are throwing around the word arson, and my mom explains to me that someone burned down the empty house, then our neighbor's garage. The police were following footprints in the snow. They never found who did it. Years later, my mom told me the rest. The footprints weren't lost after my neighbor's house. The footprints continued across the street, past our back door, and right through the narrow walkway between our garage and my room. Then they backtracked to the street and disappear. I don't know if the arsonist would have burned our house or our garage that night, but either way, Oreo woke us up and I think they knew that. She passed away last year at 16 and I miss her every day. She was my best friend and she never let anything happen to us, ever. A few weeks ago, my older cousin was sitting on the toilet with the lights off so she didn't wake anyone up. So I have to go pee and I walk into the bathroom and she was tired so she sounded like some ghost girl and it scared the hell out of me. Didn't see it but heard it. For years after midnight I would always hear children playing in the distance. Couldn't ever see them but I could hear them. A couple years back was walking my dog on a late-night stroll and I heard it closer than I ever have before. Like right next to me. Looked around and there was about 3 coyote about 100 feet away from. Apparently they sound like small children. Thanks for watching. See you later.